Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, digital sports producer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, here with a mobile Joe Starkey today for our weekly, this is now our second one, our weekly Joe Starkey mailbag video. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well. Beautiful here in Pittsburgh. Can we give it away every week, Adam, that we tape this thing? I mean, it doesn't work if we don't give it away. It's beautiful. Who's to say it's going to be beautiful in the morning? I can't promise that.
Yeah, well, especially lately, you can't promise it, Joe. But we won't give it away in future weeks. But those of you who are with us now, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. So, Joe, the big topic I wanted to touch on today was the lead of your written mailbag, which I will include the link to at post-gazette.com down in the description. The lead was people asking about the possible renovation of Acrisure Stadium, and you pointed out that last week, David Morehouse, the former Penguins executive, was promoted within the Steelers organization, and some around town are seeing that as kind of the opening salvo for the Steelers, either looking for a major renovation of Acrisure Stadium or maybe even a new stadium altogether. What's your read on that situation, Joe, in terms of what is going to happen and what should happen?
Well, just that I think it's pretty clear that they're aiming to do something with Acrisure Stadium, either replace it or upgrade it. It seems about the time that upgrades, perhaps major upgrades, would be warranted here. Three River Stadium was 30 years old when they got rid of that. And what are we in? Year 23, 24, we're headed to here. So that makes sense. I don't think that Acrisure needs to be replaced. It looks like it was built on a very small budget because it was easily the cheapest stadium of the 21st century in the NFL. That's not going to change anytime soon now that they're going for $1 billion or a couple $1 billion. But I don't care. And I get the gist that a lot of people who go to games there as fans don't really care, that it's not one of these new age, modern, you know, skyscraper NFL facilities. They just want to go watch football. And I think in a pretty cool place in town, by the way, nice restaurant, bar district. I think it's a great place to watch a game. And more importantly, the people who pay for tickets all the time seem to think that too. That's the gist that I get. I don't think it needs to be replaced, especially not with my money and your money. If Art Rooney wants a new stadium and wants to pay for it, great. Can find people to pay for it other than the taxpayers. Wonderful. But I don't think a new one's needed. Refurbishments is another matter. That makes sense.
Well, what kind of renovations would you like to see, Joe, if they do go toward a major facelift of that that place? Because I can tell you from reporting I've done for stories for years, I did a story a few years ago, Joe, about the possibility of bringing a college football bowl game here, and the line from the Steelers at the time was that the facility was not adequate for bringing two MAC football schools here in late December. I said, wait a second, you're staging NFL games here. How is it not an adequate facility? But I think that was just, a lot of bluster from their end because they do see, from their perspective that they're not getting the value out of the stadium. So what
I
would
don't
you
care.
change about it?
Well, first of all, I don't care if they're getting the value out of the stadium. I don't want somebody reaching into my pocket so that they can extract more value out of the stadium. And I certainly don't care if there's a bowl game between two MAC schools. And the idea of, attracting a Super Bowl is ludicrous because the city of Pittsburgh doesn't have the infrastructure for that type of thing. So really, Acrisure Stadium exists to host events. Taylor Swift is coming there as long as you can fit people in the seats at $300, $500, $800 a pop, and they can sit there and look at a stage. It's fine as long as they can sit there and watch a bunch of guys running around on a patch of grass hitting each other in the head. It works. What would I like to see? Nothing in particular. I would just like to know that if it's starting to, dilapidate from within, that they would fix whatever they needed infrastructure wise to make sure that that the place doesn't fall apart. It's funny though, after 20, 25 years, pro sports teams always seem to come crying that their stadium's falling apart. I don't know that we ever really see proof of that, but that's all I would care about is, hey, ensure that the place is going to be good for another 15 years, whatever. You know what I mean? I don't really need to see more seats, different colored seats, some contraptions or additions. Somebody suggested like I don't even know what they did in the mailbag. You'd have to look in the mailbag, all kinds of crazy suggestions. For me, nothing obvious, more about the literal infrastructure of the stadium.
One of the things you said, you preemptively said no to in your in the written portion of the mailbag was no dome, and I think you alluded to the suggestion that a dome could bring some bigger, higher profile sports events like the Super Bowl, like maybe a college football championship game, maybe a Final Four. You know, these are things that could be on the table if you have a dome and if you have a climate controlled, arena. What do you say to that? That people want to bring those events here, and that might be worth the investment.
Well, like I said with the Super Bowl, that's never coming here because of the city itself, and I don't think it can handle that type of event. I don't think it would lend itself, transportation wise and moving around and getting to the venue. I don't think Pittsburgh's prepared for that. Final Four, I don't know. I guess PPG paints would be too small capacity wise. That type of stuff is not really interest me that much. I'm sure it interests people who could make money off it. It doesn't for me. And the dome itself, I'm just almost morally opposed to domes for football. I grew up in Buffalo. I've been living here for 30 years, and part of the lore, part of the aura, part of the history, a huge part of the history of football in markets like this is playing outdoor football, even in the worst elements. I truly believe that. I think of Bettis and Urlacher. I don't know. Is that the same legendary tale if it's on indoor carpeting with the thermostat set to 72 degrees? Not to me. Not to me, it's not. And I actually think that fans revel in being in adverse weather conditions. I feel like it makes people feel like they're part of it and that their team can thrive in conditions like that. I hate domes. They built a dome in Minneapolis, for God's sakes. The Minnesota Vikings played at Metropolitan Stadium in the outdoors. That was part of the character of that city, of that region, is to have cold outdoor football games. Maybe I'm outdated, Adam. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe fans disagree, but that's the way I feel.
I don't think fans disagree with you, Joe. I think maybe executives might, just because you can get, I think, more money out of a facility like that. And of course, if they can make more money, they're going to ask for it.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of my read on the situation. Joe, what's the earliest you want to have this conversation about PNC Park? Considering the Pirates lease is coming up too. We're all talking about this for people who aren't familiar with how these things work, but the lease is coming up for both of these teams. It's a 30-year lease that was signed in 2001. It'll end in 2031, and then after that, you have to renegotiate a new lease for both teams. Of course, I think we both expect both teams to re-up their leases. We're not talking about like an Oakland A's going to Las Vegas type of situation, but the Pirates are going to have to renegotiate too. Do you ever expect them to say, "Hey, we want to move out of PNC Park," or is this a 100-year building? Like Wrigley Field or Fenway Park, just because of how beautiful it is and how beloved it is, even compared to the team that resides in it.
Yes, I would say what you said. The last part there is, I hope we never have that conversation with PNC Park. I'm sure that they've had many lease renewals at Wrigley Field and Fenway, and that's what I hope PNC is. It's an absolute jewel of a ballpark, and whatever they have to do, like Acrisure, infrastructure-wise, to keep the place humming and not falling apart. I mean, that's what I do there. That's different to me. That's different because that place was built perfectly, and part of the lore of baseball is, yes, being outdoors, but also being in an environment like that, even with the pitch clock and things like that. There's downtime. It's a totally different vibe than watching a football game. And the beauty of that ballpark is just a tremendous lure for people to get them there. I mean, with the skyline and everything else and the water behind, it's just, I hope that place never, ever, I hope there's never talk of replacing PNC Park.
Joe, I'm going to get you out of here on this. Mitch Keller had a great outing on Monday night against Colorado. Complete game shutout. We're not supposed to say that in the newspaper biz, Joe, because it's redundant, right? But it was a shutout. He pitched a great game. Is it time to start talking about him as the next extension candidate for these Pirates instead of maybe O'Neal Cruz, given that I think maybe the clock has been set back a bit by the fact that O'Neal Cruz, is injured?
Yeah, I got asked that in the mailbag as well. Absolutely. Every day, Mitch Keller's going to get more expensive. What if he blows up this season and turns into a full, a superstar? What if that happens? What if he starts the All-Star game? Like, what if he runs off a string of starts here? He's off to an incredible start in May. There was a bunch of unearned runs in his game in Tampa. I think he has a 0.64 ERA this month. He's just going to get more and more and more expensive. He revealed, I think, over on the Fan Morning Show today that there have been talks between him and the Pirates. Do it. The sooner the better. And the guy he faced last night, Freeland for the Rockies, I think he's 5 years, maybe 5 years at 60 something. That sounds great to me for Keller. I would do that in a second.
What would you go up to, Joe? Or do you want to see a little bit more before you talk about the $100 million?
Not there yet. No, not there.
All right. Well, we will see how things go. Joe is setting off here, so we are going to let everyone go, and we'll check in with you again next week. Thanks for joining us today, Joe. We look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks, Adam. And see everybody. Read that mailbag and send me questions. Thank you.
Please do. Yes.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.